Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for coming. One of the things that I personally do love about the launch of Donor Week is that opportunity outside to network, to actually get to catch up with people. It was very pleasant. Thankfully, we were blessed with the weather. My job here is to be the steward and point out where all the exits are. If we could have mobile phones on silent, I have to do that to my own phone now when I finish speaking. Mobile phones are obviously a very important part of the whole organ donation journey. Often we get our call on the mobile phone, so asking people to turn them off would be a little inappropriate. Our exits, we can exit out the right there, and out down the steps we can exit out the left there, out through the front door. In the event of a fire alarm, obviously please do listen to any of the staff of the Mansion House, and we meet up outside at the front gate is kind of where we do a head count to make sure everybody is okay. So without any further delay, I would like to hand the floor over to the CEO of the Irish Kidney Association, Carol Moore.
Hi, and thanks very much, Colin. Hello to everybody, and thank you for bearing with us as we took the photographs, and it was great to chat to so many people. So I'll be acting as MC for the event, and first of all, I'd like to introduce you to our national chairperson, Eddie Flood. Eddie will do the introduction and welcome, and Eddie himself is a transplant recipient. So over to you, Eddie.
Good afternoon, everybody, and on behalf of the IKA, we're delighted to welcome you here to the Mansion House for the launch of our Organ Donor Awareness Week. As Carol said, I'm a transplant patient myself, and I all know too well, as everybody that has been transplanted knows, that we wouldn't be living today without the generosity of our donors. So we pay special thanks to them today for what they've done for us, and we remember them every day as well. We are also very thankful to all our healthcare professionals and our own families for the care and support they've given us over the years, and all those organisations supporting organ donation. And we're delighted to see so many of them here today. We'd like to welcome the Cathaoirleach of the Seanad, Senator Mark Daly, and Minister Stephen Donnelly, who will be arriving later. Thank you to the Lord Mayor of Dublin, Caroline Conroy, for the use of this beautiful venue. And we share our condolences to all people who have lost loved ones in the past year. So at the moment, I'll ask you to have a moment's silence for people that have passed away. So thank you. Thank you. Today we will hear from the mother of a deceased donor, people who have received organ transplants, and a patient awaiting a transplant. We will also hear from the Minister of Health, Stephen Donnelly, and we will hear from Dr. Catherine Motherway, the clinical lead for organ donation for the OTTI. This week is a very special week for all charities, and especially us. We are promoting organ donor awareness, and I'd like to believe that people that have been transplanted promote organ donor awareness every day they wake up. And you know, that's my feeling, and lots of other people would share that thought. So the most important thing we can have this week is to have the conversation with our next of kin. And, you know, it's the most, I know it's not a very pleasant conversation to have, but at the end, you know, it saves lives. By having that conversation, we're putting it in the domain there for people to, you know, realise that when something tragic happens to their families, that some good can come from it. So that's what we're hoping to do this week, is to raise that awareness. So thank you all.
Thanks very much, Eddie. Next, we're going to hear from Kate Tuhick, who herself received a liver transplant.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honour to be here, but as organ recipients know only too well, it's an honour to be anywhere. My name is Kate Tuig. I'm from Clonmel in County Tipperary, and I received a life-saving liver transplant in October 2022, following 23 months of being on the transplant waiting list. My liver transplant took place 7 months after marrying my husband Owen, and was the life-affirming pinnacle of an eventful and challenging few years. At the age of 17, it was suspected that I had an autoimmune liver disease. This diagnosis was confirmed in my second year of college through a liver biopsy, and from then on I was treated for autoimmune hepatitis using steroids and immunosuppressive drugs. It was discovered later that I had an overlap disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis. PSC is a chronic illness that damages the bile ducts, and in turn, it can lead to irreversible liver damage. Aged 20, I buried the diagnosis and continued living a normal life, taking medication and attending 6 monthly checkups. It took years and some bumps in the road for me to accept that I was ill. As my 25th birthday approached, I was in the middle of a total lifestyle overhaul, motivated by coming to terms with my illness and a desire to feel in control. It was at this point, where I was feeling the most positive that I had in years, that I was knocked back by the news that my liver was steadily deteriorating towards failure. I would need a liver transplant. Something happens when you're faced with your own mortality. A hidden gear kicks in. I was in a crisis and desperate to reverse the prognosis and prove it wrong. I started living as if I had nothing to lose, changing jobs, beginning a master's, moving city, and generally giving everything my best shot. Owen, my now husband, took this on with me. We were 2 kids navigating unknown terrain, experiencing an insidious, slow-burning fear that few people our age knew. I am so grateful to have him in my life. In May 2019, my medical care was transferred to the team in St. Vincent's, a team that guided us with kindness and incredible care from pre to post-transplant. A pandemic was upon us and I was finishing my master's degree. I was in and out of hospital, spending weeks at a time isolated and being treated for various infections. I became so unwell prior to being listed that when the day came in November 2020, it felt like a celebration to finally be accepted onto the transplant waiting list. At last, there was hope. If it was death or a liver transplant, then liver transplant every time. Without organ donation, that hope doesn't exist, and there is only death. When you're first listed, you cling to your phone, expecting it to go off at any minute. You're full of dreams of a future again, until you catch yourself on the realization that for you to get this ultimate gift, another living, breathing person will die. At times, this reality feels overwhelming. Why should I live while somebody else doesn't? But organ donation makes sense for everyone. Out of the darkest day for one family, upon losing their precious and deeply loved one, another family or multiple families are spared from the same fate. Their loved one leaves the ultimate legacy of having saved lives because they had that conversation. They said yes. In death, they gifted life. My donor has brought laughter back into our home, She has brought dreaming into our future. She has created space for us to heal from trauma where before we suppressed it to survive. I can't find words more apt to describe organ donation than it is the gift of life. It's only now in health, when we're in normal situations, that we realise how ill I was, how much fear we were living in, and what illness took from us. Our donor has given us our lives and future as a young married couple back. She has spared my parents from losing their only daughter. She is a part of our family now, and she is on the front of our minds every day. To my donor and her family, we, my parents, my family and friends, are thankful beyond words. To the team in St. Vincent's, we are forever grateful for your care and kindness. Owen, no matter how many times I gave you the chance to leave, you stuck with me through illness. And here we are living our lives in health because of an organ donor. Owen and I are now back planning for our future. We're back to our careers in music, and we're now busy planning for the staging of our music festival when next we meet, to be held on the grounds of Raheen House, Clonmel, this July. Without a donor, without that word yes, this summer and our lives would look entirely different. Thank you to the Irish Kidney Association for bringing awareness to this vital cause. Organ donation saved my life, and it's an absolute honour to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I would say it is our honour to actually have you here. You told the story so eloquently, and you really epitomised just what it means to have an organ donation, and also about this special bond that it seems to me every transplant recipient has with their donor family. Not a day goes by but they don't think about their donor, so thank you very much. So next up we're going to have Niall Kennedy. Niall is actually a nurse, so he has many different ways of looking at his own situation, and he is actually currently awaiting a transplant. So, Niall.
Honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me here to speak to you today. My name is Niall Kennedy, and I'm here to share with you my experiences as somebody with chronic kidney disease on dialysis and awaiting a transplant. Originally from County Roscommon, I now live in Wexford with my wife Helen and my 3 teenage boys, Des, Owen and Cathal. I've been working as a nurse for over 30 years and currently work as a respiratory clinical nurse specialist, looking after patients with chronic illnesses such as COPD, asthma, pulmonary fibrosis and sleep apnea. In preparing for this talk, I did consider the duality that is there at the heart of being somebody looking after people with chronic illness while having a chronic illness myself. But that's probably a talk for a different day. My kidney story began back in 2005 when, attending for a routine medical exam, I was found to have extremely high blood pressure. My sister had previously been diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease, so that was the first obvious port of call to investigate. And sure enough, a kidney ultrasound was performed which confirmed the diagnosis. I didn't know it at the time, but polycystic kidney disease is the most common inheritable kidney condition in Ireland that leads to most often kidney failure. At that stage, my kidney function was close to normal, but it was expected to deteriorate slowly over the next few years. I did my best to manage my illness through monitoring my blood pressure, my diet, under the great care of Professor Catherine Wall in Tallaght. But unfortunately, as there is no effective treatment for polycystic kidney disease, my kidney function continued to deteriorate, such that by 2019, I was having conversations with my kidney team regarding transplantation and dialysis. I was referred to the Beaumont Hospital transplant team, and in the following January in 2020, I was accepted onto the list. In February 2020, I commenced on dialysis. In my own particular case, I started on peritoneal dialysis. This is a home-based treatment, which I find is very suitable for my lifestyle and my family. It's a gentler form of dialysis, but it does mean that I need to do it every night for at least 9 hours a night. It's now been over 3 years since I started dialysis. It hasn't been without its ups and downs. I've been in hospital twice with infections in my dialysis tube and had to switch over to hemodialysis for 6 months, attending the hospital 3 days a week. Thankfully, I was able to revert back to PD and now continue with it for as long as it takes. I try to live my life as best I can as a husband, father, son, as a nurse, as someone who is living with chronic illness. I'm more tired than I used to be, and my life is very restricted and medically managed. I try to live my life not as a kidney patient, but as someone who is living with chronic illness. But it's never far away, and every night that I connect up to the device, the dialysis machine, I become that patient again. But being on the transplant list is a daunting position for me and my family. But I know this is nothing compared to the anguish that donor families go through. With my years of experience, and particularly working in the intensive care unit, I know the heartbreaking decisions that families make to donate their loved ones' organs. But I also know how the life-changing gift of a kidney could transform my life and that of my family. We try to live as normal a life as we can with 3 teenagers, especially playing sports and doing leaving certs and junior cert exams, preparing for college. However, my kidney condition is never far away. And my phone is constantly charged, my bags are packed, and we know that whatever we're doing as a family could change in an instant with one phone call. To me, a kidney transplant would mean freedom and hope. Freedom from dialysis every night and freedom from a highly restrictive diet. Hope for a long and healthy life and hope to see my boys grow up. Freedom to live and to grow, and hope to live out the rest of my life with my wife Helen, who has been my rock. Thank you.
And then do the speeches, I think I should be
Okay, well, as you've probably noticed, the minister has actually arrived, so we're going to hear a slight change in the schedule, and we'll have Naomi is going to come on next, and she's going to tell her story because we'd really like the minister to hear this, and he unfortunately can't stay for too long. So Naomi, would you like to come forward, please?
Thank you. I'm glad actually I don't have to speak last because I'm finding it very emotional listening to all the recipient stories. I'd like to thank the Irish Kidney Association for inviting me here to share my family's organ donor story, as well as our story of hope. I'm here with my husband David, our eldest son Adam, and our forever 20-year-old son Aaron, who's always in our hearts, and who sadly passed away last year after a road traffic accident. I'm proud to say that all of my family are organ donors and that we made good on Aaron's promise last year. Although letting Aaron go was the most difficult decision my family have ever had to make, honouring his wishes to donate his organs wasn't. We'd spoken a few times around the kitchen table about donating our organs, always from the viewpoint of helping the recipient families. The boys lightheartedly joked that it wasn't a big deal. After all, we wouldn't be needing our organs when we were going anyway. But to be honest, when the time did come to make the decision to donate Aaron's organs, it was mostly from the viewpoint of helping my family, because we couldn't bear the thought of Aaron's life coming to such a sudden and out-of-order end. So we honoured Aaron's promise and gifted his life-giving organs. In return, his recipients have gifted us hope. Aaron's spirit has moved on to a higher consciousness, while here on earth, 4 warriors safeguard his heart, his kidneys, and his liver. Like a warrior, I imagine that transplant recipients and those still waiting on the transplant list have to be brave and fight for your lives, battling through pain and suffering until you get that life-changing call, and then anxiously waiting while your body adapts to its new charge. My family are eternally grateful that our beloved Aaron is being safeguarded in your protective care. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Aaron. Aaron was joy. You couldn't help but be taken with his infectiously big smile and his cheerful disposition. He was tall and strong and proud of his gains, which he'd achieved from months of working out in the gym, and took every opportunity to show his tattoos and his gains. He was street smart and emotionally intelligent, and he had the gift of the gab, all of which enabled him to talk his way out of trouble, talk me into saying yes, and talking the young ladies of Trim and Navan into going on dates with them. But Aaron didn't just use his emotional intelligence for his own advantage. He used it to be kind to others too. He was a lifeguard and a swim teacher in Ora Leisure Navan. He loved teaching, and he especially loved helping his beginners class, the junior ducklings, overcome their fear of the water. Aaron was generous. He gave smiles and hugs freely. He recognised vulnerability in people and knew how to hold space for you and make you feel seen and heard without judgment. In fact, 2 of his mates separately told David at Aaron's celebration of life funeral that Aaron had actually saved their lives by just turning up and being there for them when they had each been going through a prolonged, difficult time in their lives. The week after Aaron passed, I decided to tidy his room. I found old school copybooks and I threw them out without looking through them. But I picked up a refill pad and for some reason I flicked through it. There was only 1 page written in the notebook, and as I read it, I realised it was a journal from when Aaron had been in self-isolation in February last year, when he was only 19. It read, "I'm going to be myself and be nice to everyone I can. Even if a small thing I do makes someone smile, then I did a good job, because everyone has their battles, and even if for a few seconds they are happy, it makes a difference." Up until I read Aaron's journal entry, I thought being kind was just part of who he was. Maybe it was, but I know now that it was also something he was aware of the power of, and he consciously did. And I realised through his words, "I'm going to be myself," that Aaron had the self-compassion to accept himself as he was, and the self-awareness to recognise that he was more than enough to make a difference. Once again, since Aaron passed, I felt hope, and I wanted to share that hope. Thanks to monies raised through a GoFundMe page by Michael Archibald, Aaron's friend since childhood, I can share that hope. I've created a character called Ducky. He's a little blue duck with a big smile and an even bigger heart. And like Aaron, Ducky is an empath and a kindness activist, carrying out acts of kindness, one Ducky deed at a time. A Ducky deed is a conscious act of kindness carried out with intent. It leaves the recipient in a better position than before the act. It's not random. It requires careful consideration and understanding of what someone needs, rather than what's convenient for us to give. But a Ducky deed doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be as simple as making eye contact with and smiling at a person that we notice looks sad or lonely and is perhaps in need of human connection. It can be something we refrain from doing, like not punching with our fists or harsh words. It can be gifted to a dear friend we've known for years, who's going through a difficult time, by asking how they are and actively listening to them, or just sitting with them and holding space for them. Or it can be given to a complete stranger, somebody that we will never even meet, who will forever remember and be grateful to us for saving their life by becoming an organ donor and letting our loved ones know our wishes so that they can honour them. Aaron lived his life trying to be consciously kind. His last act of kindness of donating his organs is Ducky's first Ducky deed. My family are hosting a Gift of Life Ducky Deed Derby this Sunday during Organ Donor Awareness Week, and it's in association with the Irish Kidney Association. It's a relay swim race in Ora Leisure in Navan, where Aaron worked and where both Adam and our nephew Dill still work. The Derby is a fun event to bring Aaron's friends together, to honour his memory and to promote organ donor awareness by also bringing organ recipients, like many of you here today, and organ donor families together so we can share our life stories with each other and help each other see organ donation from our different donor-recipient lived experiences. It's a closed event as we only have limited seating, so if you haven't already received an invite, please contact me through our Instagram page at Ducky Deed, or I'll volunteer Colin if you can contact Colin in the Irish Kidney Association. When my family did have our conversation last year when Aaron was still with us, it was actually quite light-hearted. We intuitively knew that organ donation saves lives and thought it was no big deal for us to donate our organs. Having lived through the experience as a deceased donor family and having the honour of speaking with organ recipients since, our family have a completely new appreciation for just what a big deal organ donation is. Organ donation doesn't just save lives, it enhances the quality of lives too, and brings so much hope to both the donor family and the organ recipient family. Peter, who had two kidney transplants, told me through tears last week that his first transplant was 15 years ago. Since then he's married and he has a beautiful baby boy. When his kidney failed again though, he wasn't able to play with his son because he was so ill and he was on dialysis so much. His second transplant has meant that not only can he play with his son, but he can look forward to watching him grow up. As a mother of a deceased donor son, I cherish those extra gifted moments for Peter. For organ recipients like Peter and his family, for donor families like mine, and for your own family, I ask that you have the conversation with your loved ones about organ donation. Consciously think and talk about what it could mean for so many lives, and leave no doubt as to what your wishes are so that your family can honour them. Finally, I'd like to read our organ donor family's open letter to all organ recipients. It was written by our eldest son Adam, who's with me today, while we were with Aaron in the ICU in the hours before Aaron's final journey. It was intended for Aaron's organ recipients, but it's so filled with love and hope that I wanted to be able to share it with all recipients. From a place of pure love and adoration, although this was taken from us far too soon, we hope it can be given to you at just the right time. This organ was used by someone loved and cared for by many. It aided them in spreading love and affection to anyone that needed it. All we ask is that it can aid you in living your life to the fullest and to your choosing. From our family to yours, this gift will live and love on in you. Thank you.
I think Naomi's story, and you told it so beautifully, epitomises what organ donation and transplantation is all about. And again, we're very, very honoured to have you here and really value all the great work that you're doing in terms of raising organ donor awareness. So thank you and your family very, very much. So I think it will be very hard for the Minister, Stephen Donnelly, to follow that, and he will, I'm sure. And I'd like to thank you, Minister, very much for taking the time out of your very busy diary to come and talk to us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the invite to come here. Sorry, I'm just very moved, Leonie, by your speech. It's inspirational, and it can't be easy for any of you. A very dear friend of mine has had her life saved recently with an organ transplant, and I met her for the first time. She was sequestered away for a long time through COVID and in recovery, and I met her for the first time just 2 weeks ago. And it's amazing the difference it makes to the donors, but it's so important to hear from you and your family about your son. So thank you. It can't be easy getting up and sharing. Excuse me, I've three young boys myself. So it's thank you anyway for sharing all of that with us. I'm really happy to be here this week. I launched this for the last 2 years virtually, and it's wonderful now to be here in person in a time that we hope is post-COVID. I think as Leonie has just testified to, and I know as many of you in this room know better than anyone, the organ donation really is the most extraordinary gift, a gift of a second chance at life. The improvement in the quality of life for patients obviously is immeasurable, and I think raising awareness of how important organ donation is such an important thing. I'm aware that the pandemic brought a lot of hardships, particularly to those who were immunocompromised. It was a difficult time for the country, but it was even more difficult for those who were most at risk of COVID, and those who were on transplant lists, many seriously immunocompromised. It was a very difficult time, and it was a very difficult time for the organ transplant services, for our healthcare professionals right across the country who were working to support patients. But I really just want to acknowledge the extraordinary work of our healthcare teams all over the country who were working with patients, who were working to continue the services in the most difficult of circumstances, when many parts of our own country shut down to try and keep people safe, when our retail sector shut down and our pubs shut down. At one time, our schools, or more than once, our schools shut down. Our health services kept going. They never stopped. And the organ transplant teams never stopped. And I think it was a time of extraordinary resilience and dedication and perseverance from all of our healthcare professionals. And I just want to acknowledge all of them and all of you and the extraordinary work that you've done. Thanks to that, thanks to keeping the services going. Last year we had 250 transplants, which I think is an extraordinary achievement. And I know everyone here today can attest to what every one of those 250 transplants has meant. I want to acknowledge those 250 transplants last year, those 250 lives came through donations from 86 deceased donors and 33 living donors. And I could never attempt to put it into the words that Leonie has and your family have as to the significance of that for all of you. And at least when you're dealing with the most unthinkable of tragedies yourself, at least it sounds from your own testimony there is some solace in knowing that good people are walking around our country today because of that gift. And I really just want to acknowledge that for everybody who signs up to be an organ donor, and including the living donors who sign up to donate a kidney as well. It is such an extraordinary gift, and I want to thank all of those. I think one of the wonderful exemplars of just how life can change for those who receive a donation was in the World Transplant Games. We had 14 members compete. They had the very difficult task of representing their country and clearly getting themselves into extraordinary shape. We had 4 bronze medals, 6 silver medals, 7 gold medals at the World Games, and I think it's extraordinary. The hospitals involved have each of the hospitals, I think, really just needs to be acknowledged. In Beaumont, we had 163 liver transplants just last year. In St. Vincent's, 51 liver and 8 pancreas transplants. In the Mater, we had 10 heart and 18 lung transplants. In the first quarter of this year, so January, February, March of this year, there have been 81 transplants And I just want to say that it's the best start to a year that our organ donation service has ever had. I think it's an extraordinary testament to everyone who has helped raise awareness and to everyone involved in our health services as well. So we've just had the best start to a year we've ever had in Ireland in terms of organ donation. In my role as Minister for Health, I'm very committed to working alongside all of you and our healthcare professionals, the Irish Kidney Association, and all of the other organisations in civil society involved. Essentially, we want organ donation to become the norm. That's our goal. So we've taken a number of measures in government over the last few years during this government. We're bringing in the human tissue bill, as you'll be aware. We've made about 2.5 million available in funding services. I was just asked on the way in to make sure that dialysis services get sorted out in Sligo. The person asking me had promised that she wouldn't, she had promised the people in Sligo she wouldn't ask. And then quite rightly, the first thing she said was make sure that we have proper dialysis services down in Sligo. If I'm coming to a gig like this and I haven't been asked for at least 5 million quid by the time I leave, you're just not trying hard enough. So well done. But the human tissue bill is important. The human tissue bill, I introduced it to the Dáil earlier this year, and I'm very happy to say now we've been working very hard to get it ready for committee stage. And I just checked in with the officials this morning in advance of this meeting here, and I'm very happy to say that it's my intention, to have the human tissue bill at committee stage in the next 4 to 5 weeks. So that's going to be a really important step. I have no doubt that there will be widespread support across politics for the bill. We'll see what sort of amendments are in there. I then want to get it back into the Dáil as quickly as possible through report stage, and then over to the Seanad as quickly as we can. And as you'll all be aware, this is a fundamental change in how we approach organ donation in this country. Essentially, we will be legislating for deemed consent. So essentially, it'll be an opt-out rather than an opt-in service. And our belief and our hope is that this is going to make a very big difference in terms of the number of donors that are available. The other thing we're doing is the National Office of Clinical Audit is undertaking a national potential donor audit development project. We think this is going to help as well. And it is going to help us more thoroughly understand how the current system is functioning. There's a lot of good things happening in the system, but with the best will in the world, it's not perfect. I've spoken with patients, I've spoken with clinicians who are saying, yes, the following things are working. However, we can always make it better. So I think this audit is going to be part of a listening exercise, listening to patients, listening to clinicians, listening to civil society groups, and really trying to identify what can be done better on behalf of patients and on behalf of this service. We've heard today, you've all heard today, from those impacted by organ donation and transplant, by the system we have. The recipients have told about how their lives have changed. We heard from Naomi and about Aaron just now. So can I conclude by saying a few quick things? First of all, I want to thank all of you involved in promoting organ donation. I want to thank all of you involved in supporting patients through organ donation and supporting families on behalf of donors through organ donation as well. It's a very sensitive area. It's such an important area, and it's not easy. It's not always easy. So I really just want to thank everybody for that. I want to thank our healthcare professionals. I think we're going from strength to strength. The fact that there's been more transplants in the last 3 months than ever before in this country is a really good thing. We're going to get the human tissue bill in. We're going to continue to invest in our health services. We're in the middle of the biggest expansion of our public health services in the history of the state in terms of workforce and services and beds. We're going to continue with all of that, we're going to continue investing into these services. We're going to continue investing into patient supports. And we're going to continue working very closely with the quite extraordinary groups, the Irish Kidney Association and the other groups who do so much work to continue to raise awareness. I'll be using the opportunity in a few weeks' time at committee stage to raise awareness again. And obviously we'll be doing everything that we can this week as well to get the message out there for just how important it is. So thank you again for the invite here today. Thank you for all of the work you're doing. And between us all, I think we're going to continue to make things better and better and better and save more and more and more lives and change more and more and more lives. And our ambition, which we will absolutely achieve, is that Ireland is looked at as a country, looked at around the world as a country that is leading in terms of organ donation, opt-out legislation, and critically then the clinical and the social services that need to go with all of that. So, Gura Mila Magwit.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your support. As Minister has to leave and we want to get some photographs, what we're going to do is have a little quick pause, and tea is being served with sandwiches. So we'll take a little break, get the photographs done, and then we'll resume back here if that's okay. Okay?
Right, Carol, they're all yours.
I wouldn't believe that for a minute. Great. Well, thank you very much for your patience, and hopefully you got to enjoy some tea and refreshments, and some of you got to say hello to the Minister and got photographs taken, which are all part of the whole campaign of organ donor awareness. And I think by the time he left, he had proposals probably far exceeding 5 million. So well done, guys. Next what we're going to do is, we're going to continue on with the patient stories, because I think it's really important that we continue to hear the patient stories, because that's what makes a difference. So next up, we're going to have Michelle Gelshi, and you heard the other side of waiting on the kidney transplant, and now Michelle is going to tell us about actually getting a kidney transplant. So over to you, Michelle.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Michelle, I'm from Galway, and I'm a kidney transplant recipient. And after hearing Naomi's story, I hope I get through this okay. Life with kidney disease can feel like a never-ending roller coaster. My roller coaster ride began in late 2000, when I was diagnosed with septicemia after an otherwise minor kidney infection. I was then diagnosed with a genetic condition known as polycystic kidney disease, or PKD. Back then, I had 100% kidney function, so after a few months, my life just returned to normal. At the time, my positive mindset, or more likely my ignorance, saw my diagnosis as little more than a future inconvenience. I had no real idea how tough kidney failure would be, or how dialysis would turn my life upside down. Instead, I lived my life to the fullest, and in my 20s, I qualified as a solicitor and I travelled the world. But by 34, my kidney function had started to decline, which is typical for people with my variant of PKD. At this stage, I was living in Dublin and I was married to Owen. We were financially comfortable and I was happy in my career. Sadly though, much of our 30s were taken up trying for a baby. This is when my diagnosis became more than just an inconvenience. Treatments were preceded by nephrology check-ins, tests, and in a couple of cases, cancelled procedures. After 6 long years though, we were blessed with a healthy son, Dylan, who's our world, and without doubt has got us through some of the toughest times with his infectious laugh and his lust for life. But during the first 2 years of his life, I went from 45% kidney function to end-stage kidney failure. I was weak, dizzy and fatigued, and life with a 2-year-old was tough. To add to the challenges, COVID-19 hit, and we went into complete isolation until we were both fully vaccinated. Owen took voluntary redundancy to be a stay-at-home dad for a year, and by December 2020, I was on peritoneal dialysis at home, 8 hours a night, 7 nights a week. It was also around this time that I was accepted onto the kidney transplant list, a high on the roller coaster ride. But then a crushing blow. My tests revealed that my high tissue antibody count, coupled with my combination of tissue and blood type, would make finding a compatible donor very difficult. It was no surprise then that of the many wonderful friends and family members who went forward to be tested to donate a kidney to me and were deemed healthy enough to do so, none were a match. This was undoubtedly the toughest time. I suffered with a lot of so-called drain pain from the dialysis machine. My sleep was horrific. I had crippling fatigue, and I was experiencing so much guilt for not being the mum that I wanted to be to my son. Hearing your child cry during the night and being unable to help because you're tied to a machine is crushing. But we're a positive family, and we refused to let us bring us down. We invested Owen's redundancy package into a camper van, and we pimped it out with upgraded leisure batteries and a snazzy inverter so I could do dialysis on the road. Our isolation mobile was a game changer. We're incredibly grateful that it allowed us to create so many happy memories during a period of pain, solitude, and grief. And the grief is real. Giving up hobbies and later work created a huge void in my life, particularly when isolated from friends and family. In late 2021, we moved home to Galway, and I started making videos for social media to raise awareness and share my experience of kidney disease. Not only did this give me purpose, but I also got a great boost from the dozens of people messaging me to tell me that my videos helped them. Then in August 2022, the roller coaster peaked. At 2 minutes to midnight, while connected to my dialysis machine, the call came. I was convinced the 087 number was a scam call, but on the transplant list, you always answer. So when a human voice said my name, I froze. The next 30 minutes were frantic and surreal. They had a kidney. It was a match, but there was no guarantees. Further tests would be required. The kidney might not be viable. When did I last have COVID? Could I make it to Beaumont from Galway in 3 hours? And all while we located the hospital bag packed many years before. This was my second chance, the gift of life. But en route to Beaumont, it hit me that somewhere in Ireland, there was a family grieving their loved one. A family who had made the brave decision at the worst time in their lives to donate their loved one's organs. Their decision saved so many lives that day, and the lives of connected family members were changed for the better. Thanks to their selfless act, my 5-year-old son has a healthy mum for the first time. And there are no words to describe how that feels. I'll be grateful for your precious gift for the rest of my life. In this journey, I've had so much help. My friends and family with their endless love and patience, the countless teams and individuals at Beaumont and Merlin Park hospitals who kept me alive and got me through the toughest of times, the transplant coordinators who found me a kidney, and the Irish Kidney Association who've been fighting for kidney patients since 1978. Thank you all so much. And a special thanks to the people in my life who stepped up to be tested for donation. It's incredibly humbling, and I'll never be able to express what it meant to me. Although transplant is not a cure, my new kidney has given me my life back. A life I intend to live to the fullest to honour my donor. I value every victory, from simply getting out of bed to take my son to Montessori, to celebrating a new lease of life with a dream holiday to Disneyland in Paris, where incidentally, I took great pleasure in having the strength to ride actual roller coasters.
Thanks, Michelle. You told that story so well, and it really illustrates everything that people go through when they're on a transplant waiting list, waiting for the call, the support from family and friends, the restrictions on lifestyle, and then, as you've described it so well, the roller coaster of life. And I loved hearing about how you adapted to it with the camper van. I think that was a great idea. So well done. Next we have Jerry Fitzgerald, and Jerry's from Tipperary, and he's had a lung transplant, so he's going to tell us about that.
Good afternoon to you. My name is Jerry Fitzgerald. I'm 69 years of age and from Tipperary town. I'm so lucky to be here today to share my story because in 2021, a total stranger gave me the gift of life. I always got bad chest infections every year, but after a course of antibiotics and steroids, I started to feel better. It became the norm. 4 years ago, I went to a routine visit to my doctor, Chris Ryan in Tipperary town, fantastic GP. He said, after listening to my chest, he said, I think you have pulmonary fibrosis, I'm not sure, will you get it checked out? He referred me to a consultant in Limerick University Hospital. I wasn't overly concerned, I thought I was just being cautious. After a number of tests, it was indeed confirmed that I got pulmonary fibrosis. It's incurable. It causes hardening and scarring of the lungs, and over time it gets worse until your lungs no longer function. They prescribed a course of medication to slow down the progression of the disease. And I was put in touch with the Irish Lung Fibrosis Association, so kind and helpful. They started me on a course of physio and exercises twice weekly on a 13-week program. The teams in the Mater and ILFA are absolutely amazing. They really helped me feel I could do it. I threw myself into the physio and really enjoyed the exercise classes and felt good after it. I enjoyed it so much that I kept going after the prescribed program ended. All the time, my function was being monitored, but after about 5 months, my oxygen levels and energy was dropping. I was introduced to consultant lung transplant physician Michelle Murray in the Mater Hospital. who explained the very poor condition of my left lung and I need a transplant. I was absolutely devastated to hear the news. I didn't realise I was so sick at all. I was on oxygen for 24 hours a day, needing 40 bottles a month. I carried a bag on my back and could only walk about 40 metres from my house before I turned back. I was afraid I wouldn't get home. Also, my weight dropped about 30 kilos in 2 years when I was really sick. When COVID was at its actual worst in 2021, I was put on the transplant waiting list. I got 5 false calls. For those who don't know what a false call is, you get a call that a donor lung could be available for you. And after you get, all the time you get prepped for surgery. All the tests done before you hear whether it'll happen or not. The organ may be damaged or more suitable for another patient on the waiting list, who is probably on the same corridor as you in the hospital, waiting for the news. It's a very emotional time, because what you're actually thinking of is the donor and their family. And you're thinking of the family at home, because you're expecting news at home as well. On the 6th call, it was my turn. In the winter of 21, my life was saved by an organ donor. Total stranger. I was home for Christmas and made great strides and intended a monthly visits to the Mater Hospital subsequently. I love walking my dogs every day. I have 3 rescue dogs, and I walk them every day. On the wet days, I have an exercise bike, which I use on the old wet days. I'm so grateful now to my donor to be alive and enjoy my life with my partner, beautiful partner Pip down there, and my 2 grown-up kids and my 16-year-old grandson, who is going on 45. I want to thank a few people really sincerely now. I've been thinking of the best way to do it. All I can say is thank you. And I have a few people everyone I met, but on the top of the list is my partner Pip, who is studying for her master's herself and never failed to get me to an appointment or a meeting, and was an outstanding person in my life. I wasn't able to drive when I needed to get up and down the hospital. She took time off and battled through traffic to get me there and back without a word of angst or complaint. I'd also like to thank the health service in general. I'd also like to thank my GP in Tiptown, the people in Limerick University Hospital, the Mater Hospital, and of course the ILFA. They took absolutely fantastic care of me. But I want to leave the last few words to, I'm so lucky to be alive. I'm quite emotional to thank my donor and their family, who in their absolute hour of need could think of somebody else. And I'm a beneficiary of that. Not only did they give me life, but they put joy back into my life. I think of them every minute, every waking hour. And we have a little flower arrangement at home, organised by Pip, and it's illuminated by beautiful, delicate candles. It's been lighting every day since I got the operation, at least 12 hours a day. I want to thank you all very much for listening to me. God bless.
Thanks very much, Jerry. Again, told your story so well and beautifully, and really shows like it was the 6th call that he received before he actually got the transplant. So you can really see the resilience and the bravery and the energy that transplant recipients have to go through that. I mean, psychologically, it must be very, very difficult to do that. So well done. It also shows that, you know, right up until the last moment, that even after the call is made, that an organ can be found to be, there's something not quite right for the recipient. There could be a cyst or something, and the transplant does not proceed. So it's a very, as he said, very emotional time. So next, what we're going to do if the technology works is I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the campaign itself, and using slides if the technology works. If not, we'll revert to paper and talking. So first thing to mention is that this year is a very notable year for organ donation. I'm not going to go through all of these anniversaries, but one big anniversary is that it's the 60th anniversary of the first kidney transplant. So that's quite a record, and reflects very well on the healthcare professionals concerned. 45 years ago, since the then kidney donation card was introduced, which then became the organ donation card. 30 years since we started doing liver transplantation. So again, we've been at this a while, and we've been very successful, and success rates and survival rates have really increased over the years. And then 10 years since we first put code 115 on the driving license. And since then, 1.45 million people have actually signed up to say, I will be an organ donation. And it's great that most people carry their their driving license with them, so the families can just check. Again, I suppose one of the questions I would ask is, and the IKA would ask is, this would be the great benefit of an opt-in register, that you have 1.45 million people already signed up. So it shows how positive Irish people are about organ donation. So the Minister went through the figures, so I'm not going to dwell on them too much. Last year was extremely positive in terms of the number of transplants that were performed. But if you look at the 5-year average figure, this is the figure prior to COVID, and COVID did have an impact because there had to be a pause on transplants for obvious reasons. So we can see that in terms of the number of deceased donors, we've got back to the pre-COVID period, 86 deceased donors compared to 85 in the pre-COVID period. And then on kidneys, we've actually gone higher than the pre-COVID period. But unfortunately, on the liver, lung and heart, we still haven't quite got back to the pre-COVID period. And again, because we don't have the detailed information, as the Minister mentioned, we're getting into these potential donor audits now. We're not quite sure why that happens. Disappointingly for the kidney patients, that the number of living donors has actually gone down at 33 compared to 35 last year, and then pre-COVID that was at 43. So again, we think that very much reflects pressure on capacity, trying to get ICU beds, trying to get ordinary beds, trying to get space in operating theatres. So it's something we think should be looked at. And if we look at international comparisons, the number of transplants per million of the population, we can see that compared to Latvia, we actually do quite well. We're at 40.3. But if we look at Croatia, which is a similar population, they're at 65.4, so we have a bit to go. And then if you look at Spain, who are the acknowledged leaders in this area, they're actually at 99.5. So we still have a way to go in terms of increasing our organ donation rates. And it isn't just about awareness. Awareness obviously is a key part of the whole process, because if you don't have family consent, then that donation can't happen. But it depends on number of deaths in hospital, and only about 1% of deaths are actually happening in ICUs. And then it is dependent on that ICU actually identifying potential donors. And again, we all know how busy our ICU healthcare professionals are. And then that family actually have to be requested to donate. And then a medical suitability test has to be performed to see, is that potential donation possible? Perhaps the person has had cancer recently, so then it's not possible to proceed. And then finally the family give their final consent, and then a team has to come and actually retrieve that organ, and generally they're coming from another hospital. And then the organ actually has to be transplanted. So it's a hugely complex with an awful lot of different pieces. And I think it's a great testament to our healthcare professionals working in the system that they manage to do so many donations when you look at the pressures that the healthcare system is under. So the Minister mentioned the Human Tissue Bill, and just to mention that there's a lot of confusion about this, but that family consent is still required. That under the old system, everybody's approached, but under the new proposed system in the Human Tissue Bill, those people opting out the family will not be approached at all, which is different to other countries that have gone down this route. And then only if the person hasn't opted out will the family be approached for consent. So this is a really key message, we want to get out there, that the family still have to consent. So that's really important that the family have that conversation. The reasoning behind this is that it will change the culture. So instead of healthcare professionals approaching families and saying, would you consider donation? It will be, is there any reason why you wouldn't do donation? So it'll change the emphasis. There will still be a need for family consent, as I've mentioned, and the donor card, the digital download, the 1.5 million people on the register, and then a new one that came in this year with the passing of the Advanced Healthcare Directive. The Irish Hospice Foundation are asking people to fill out My Personal Wishes and Care Plan, which sits along the Advanced Healthcare Directive. And there's a space in that as well for people who are patients to say whether they wish to make an organ donation. So again, these are all very important, but it's really important the family know the person's wishes. So in terms of the Human Tissue Bill, we'd like to see a couple of amendments. The first thing is we'd like to see that an annual potential donor audit is actually published. In other countries, they actually publish this information. So you can see right down to the level of a hospital, how many requests were made, how many operations proceeded, why the operation didn't proceed. So I can actually look at a hospital in England and see one operation didn't proceed because of the lack of an ICU bed. So other countries do this, so we shouldn't just be doing potential donor audits on a once-off basis. We should be publishing this information on an ongoing basis. We'd like to see a provision for required requests so that every hospital has a policy where when a potential donor is there, that the hospital has a policy that they must be approached. Because it is, when you think about it, very difficult for healthcare professionals who are dedicated to saving lives to actually ask a family about this. And again, it's important that we support healthcare professionals in doing that, and we provide timing and protected time to do that, training, and also that we allow them to debrief, because so often the healthcare professionals aren't getting the supports they need, and that's why we're seeing burnout. We'd like to see a representative of a donor family on the proposed independent panel, which will review difficult cases, because we think the voice of donor families hasn't been heard enough in campaigning. And we do know, as we heard so beautifully from Naomi, it gives them solace as well. So we think it's important that their voice is there. And then in relation to consent, that it would actually reflect the 9 grounds of the Equal Status Act. So in conclusion, we badly need this Human Tissue Bill. It's replacing very outdated legislation. It provides a good framework for organ donation. It also allows for altruistic living kidney donation, where there's no connection between the donor and the transplant recipient. Currently, people who want to donate a kidney have to go abroad. And we really look forward to working with the Department of Health and ODTI in ensuring increased organ transplantation for everyone. So just to then quickly go into the campaign very briefly, as you've seen, it's 3 different posters in Irish, 3 posters in 3 different languages, and it's all about don't leave your loved ones in doubt. Whatever your wishes are, talk to your family, don't leave them in doubt. And we've partnered with a number of chemist chains who are going to take the donor cards, who are going to display the posters, most of them digitally. Nobody takes paper posters anymore. And it's also supported by the Irish Pharmacy Union and from the Road Safety Authority as well. Another big development this year is that all of the biggest post offices, 370 of them, are taking the donor cards, and then the 350 post offices that have digital displays, they're actually going to be displaying the poster. So we're hoping that way to generate conversations. And if not too far from here is South Andrew Street, and they have a huge digital display if you want to go look at it. And then our thanks again to Clear Channel, because they're providing free advertising. They have a number of spaces in their displays in shopping centres and indoor arenas, so they'll be displaying the poster as well. And then we're hoping that Fair City, and you'll have to watch it, I think, tonight to see the poster, that the poster will be on display there as well. And then finally, just to mention that this is very much a partnership, it's a community. We're trying to change culture here, and we need to work with our partners, whether it's in the Department of Health, with our other NGOs and charities involved in this, with the healthcare professionals, to identify and understand what are the barriers to increased organ donation and transplantation. And we need to work as a network, as a community, to actually make this happen. So I'd like to thank you all for listening to this, and we're going to now move back to something far more interesting, which is hearing another patient story. So we're going to hear from Niall Whiteley, who had a heart transplant.
So, hello everybody. My name is Niall Whiteley. I'm 52 years of age. I'm from Navanstown in Kildare. I had a heart transplant in 2019. My story begins in 2004 after a trip to India. I was installing equipment for the company that I work for, and come home unwell and steadily went downhill, and was diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy by cardiologist Dan O'Gorman in Naas Hospital. I was then moved to Tala under Vincent Marr, another cardiologist who, with a lot of medication and care, got me back on my feet, but was always, somewhere down the line, it was always there, at some point you're going to need a transplant. It's not going to last forever. And luckily for me, I lasted for 15 years. Although 2019 as a year was a complete disaster. Had a number of health issues. I had a collapse at home, ended up with a fractured skull, deafened me right here. My sense of smell and taste is completely altered. But we kept battering through. Your mind's in a strange place. You think you're okay, but for everyone around you, your body's just falling apart. So eventually in late 19, Professor Marr sent me up to the Mater Hospital, up to Emer Joyce. And luckily enough, I was put on the heart transplant list. I'd one false call, shall we say. And a real downer when the news came through, no, this is not for you. So was put on a balloon pump for a few weeks, left me incapacitated. But then 3 weeks later, got the call, yeah, we're all set, ready to go. Luckily enough, you've a lot of different emotions, elation, relief, fear. Major one is fear, am I going to make it the far side? And luckily enough, a few days later, came back around, family by my side, and I'm here to tell the tale. But a real strange feeling, a real strange time. I suppose only for a donor family, I wouldn't be here. They've made the ultimate sacrifice for me to be here. But as for my family, my work and all now, I'm back working full time. I'm back coaching ladies football, back shooting, back fishing. It's great. It's a new life, new start, new beginning. So just for me, just for the family, I'd like to thank them. I'd like to thank the Mater Hospital, Tala, Naas, my family, my work colleagues, everyone. It's just so good to be here to be able to tell you this story. And thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
Niall. And as you can see, once again, every story is unique. And it was told so well, and it shows how tough it is, but it shows what modern healthcare can do, that you're now back fishing and back working full time. So that's great to hear. So on modern healthcare, and next I'm going to ask Catherine Motherway, who is a powerhouse in this whole area, and she's going to say a few words from her in her role as clinical lead of ODTI.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Carol, and thanks to the IKA who have invited me to speak here today on behalf of ODTI, my colleagues in intensive care units around the country, my colleagues who care for donor families, my colleagues who care for transplant recipients. As we've heard today, organ donation saves and transforms the lives of Ireland's transplant recipients. The gift of life given by our donors, both living and deceased, is celebrated and cherished publicly every year on this Organ Donation Awareness Week. This year, as Carol has said, will mark 60 years of organ donation and transplantation in Ireland. That first transplant patient was a young man with end-stage renal failure who subsequently survived for 2 months. At that time, dialysis in Ireland was in its infancy, with only 2 dialysis machines available in 1963 for the entire country. It is heartening to report that over the intervening years, developments and advances in medicine, such as renal replacement therapy, respiratory support, high-tech medication, and mechanical assist devices for heart failure treatment, have allowed us to offer hope to more patients suffering from failure of a vital organ. While these therapies help support patients' well-being, solid organ transplantation remains the only life-saving option for those with major organ failure. Organ failure, as we have heard, has an enormous impact on the lives of our patients, young and old. Often, lives on hold, and for many, it is a matter of life and death. Advances in transplant medicine, immunosuppressive drugs, tissue typing, surgical techniques, and organ support and preservation technology has enhanced our ability to offer organ transplantation to more recipients. At present, in our kidney transplant recipients, they have a median survival of 21.7 years after first deceased donor transplant. 5-year survival rates for heart transplants are 80%, liver transplants 85%, and lung transplant 75%. Many of our recipients have decades of added life. These added years of life bring joy, opportunities, love for some children, and the ability to return to work. None of this would be possible without the generosity of our donors and their families. Our living donors give of themselves freely to help a loved one driven by enormous generosity, and will in time be allowed to give that in an altruistic, non-directed way once legislation supports it. Patients who can avail of a living donation for renal failure have excellent outcomes. They generally wait less time, they spend less time on dialysis, and sometimes can avoid dialysis altogether. We remember particularly our deceased donors and their families who, in the midst of grief and sudden loss, find it in their hearts to think of others. That decision to donate can give life to up to 7 people. This week, I would encourage everyone to let their families know their wishes about organ donation. Have that conversation, please. It is your family who will let us know what it is you would have wanted. From my work in intensive care, I know that it can really help families to make the decision to donate at the end of life when they have had that conversation with their loved one. When the wishes of the donor are known, respecting and honouring that wish can bring comfort in a really dark and difficult time. As the Minister had alluded to, we continue to work to ensure that organ donation is offered as an integral part of end-of-life care where appropriate to our patients. To that end, NOCA, with our organ donation nurse managers, many of whom are here today, clinical leads in organ donation, our colleagues in Organ Donation Transplant Ireland, with the help of our public and patient representative Martina Goggin, have developed a potential donor audit to look at our practice, assess how we're doing, learn from the knowledge gained so we can achieve that aim of offering organ donation where appropriate to all of our patients. Those of us who work in intensive care units Transplant Medicine and Organ Donation Transplant Ireland have the honour of caring for our donors and families and our transplant community. We thank all of our donors. You are the linchpin of the service to our people. I want to try and use some words in Irish to try and express the feelings and emotions around this wonderful act of human kindness. Bhvalam cúpla focail as gaeilge úsáid, chun na móthúcháin seo a chur in uail. Dús, sorrow, brón. But tempered, Dásulagam, with hope, which is dochas. There is loneliness, uignas, which I think is a wonderful word, Oscailge, but that is tempered by love, grón. Grief, the word for that is dolus, but an sin tá mishnachan, which is courage. Boss, agus ba, death and life, but also pride, brod. Míle buchas to all of our donors. Tá siad in our guidsmita agus padracha. They are in our thoughts and prayers. For our deceased donors, may they rest in peace. Ar yeshte greva nanamaka dilsha. Gurmagat.
Thank you so much, and I think Catherine illustrates why, despite the capacity constraints and the infrastructure constraints, we have so many dedicated healthcare professionals who work so hard on behalf of our patients, and we really are very grateful to you, Catherine, and to all healthcare professionals who work so hard. So our final patient story is going to come from William Mills. William actually had a kidney and a pancreas transplant, so he's an interesting story to tell.
Thanks very much. I'm a bit nervous, so I'll just go with it. So, hi everyone, my name is William Mills. I'm 42 from Mallow, County Cork. It's a privilege to be here today, be able to tell my story. I underwent a combined kidney and pancreas transplant last year in St. Vincent's Hospital. I was diagnosed with diabetes in 1996 when I was 15. I was injecting myself 4 to 5 times a day with insulin for about 18 years until I ended up going on an insulin pump. Diabetes really forced me to grow up very quickly. I became very independent, very determined. I'm a positive person, and it made me realise I had to take care of myself, which was very hard living with diabetes, as people hopefully will be able to tell you that. With school, I missed a lot when I was in my teens, because before I was diagnosed, I was very, very sick. With diabetes, it kind of affects you in many ways, your moods, tired, lots of complications with it. So I had missed a lot of school. And then for about 2 years after being diagnosed with diabetes, it did affect me as well. So in my final year of leaving cert, I dropped out. Just knew it wasn't for me. So while I was 16 up to about 18, I was working part-time. When I dropped out of school, I started working full-time. I started working full-time, and for the next 20 years I had been working full-time in management roles. Luckily, I was lucky enough to get a mortgage for my own house at the age of 20. So, which I'm still paying for. And the interest rates have gone up 6 times in the past couple of months. Thanks very much. In 2013, I changed from insulin going onto an insulin pump, and I found that to be life-changing, to be honest. Still was very difficult, but it had better control of managing my blood sugars and stuff like that. And it acted as an artificial pancreas, which I would highly recommend anyone that would be a diabetic to go on it. You just literally have a cannula in your stomach. It pumps in the insulin to you. For teenagers that would be thinking about it, do think about it, because it definitely kept me alive anyway. With this then, in 2017, I went on to a newer insulin pump, which had a sensor with it, which actually gave me constant blood sugar monitoring, and it gave me more confidence in myself, and it actually mentally made me feel better that I could actually just look at the pump and I could see what my blood sugars were. So you weren't thinking like, oh, will I check what my bloods are, because if they were high, I wouldn't want to know if, because then you'd have to try and correct them and all that kind of stuff. So again, it's all messing with the head. So that's kind of leading me up to about 2018. Then in 2018, I got a bone infection in my foot, osteomyelitis. And with that, then I was in hospital for about, I think it was about 8-9 weeks. And I was on constant IV antibiotics, so that caused damage to my kidneys. The way that kind of worked was that it was either lose my foot or take a risk of damaging my kidneys. So obviously the leg's still there. So, and luckily I have a new kidney. As I said, since then up to then I was running DVD stores, game stores, all that kind of stuff. I opened up my own store in 2010, a DVD game store. So I kept that going until about 2014. The internet kind of killed off that business, as we can see by Extravision in a year later. Luckily, I got out of it without having any debts or anything like that, so that was a good advantage. So again, after the whole foot incident, I was transferred to Leon Plant in CUH, since my kidney function was down to 45%. So he was managing my kidney function, seeing how things were going with things like that. With my diabetes, I was with Owen O'Sullivan in the Bonds in Cork, and he was absolutely outstanding. The man couldn't help me enough. His two diabetic nurses that I dealt with were Saoirse and Vera. Again, they were there anytime I needed them. They really saved my lives as well with keeping the diabetes under control. So leading me up to, say, we go with when the kidneys start to failing and stuff like that, it mainly kind of happened when the say after the foot incident, my kidney function started going from 45%, dropping down bit by bit. So when we had the pandemic, it was recommended for me to pull out of work for a little bit. With the unknown, none of us knew how long it was going to last. With me, it lasted over two years of being off work, because during the time of the start of the pandemic, I work for SuperValu, so I would be dealing with a lot of customers. I pulled out of all management roles and stuff like that when my kidney started failing and when I had the foot incident. So I literally was a till worker, which I enjoy very much because I like dealing with the public. So it took a lot of pressure off me. So when I pulled out, say, it was Patrick's Day, 2020 was my last day working at the time, due to COVID. Where am I going? So the way it kind of worked was, during that time, my kidney started failing a bit more again. And then Leon Plant in CUH kept an eye on my kidneys, watching them, the way things were going, and he was telling me, look, in time, we're going to start, the way they kind of look at things is catch it before it gets too late. So the way they were working was, he would constantly keep an eye on my bloods and my kidney functions and see the way things were going. So again, by September that year, this had dropped down to about 25%. So he said, look, it's about time that we start to get you on the transplant list. So we're going to do all the lead-up tests and things like that. So that kind of went on for about a year. I got all the things like angiograms, all the work that had to be done. I got in touch with with Beaumont, and I was in touch with Vincent and stuff like that, and they were very helpful to me, giving me information and things like that, letting me know kind of all the bits that went with it. So getting me up to, say, my transplant time. I had my transplant last year. I had a kidney and a pancreas transplant. I was luckily only on the transplant list a short time when I got the call. My transplant coordinator, who's here today, Caroline, was absolutely outstanding to me, and her colleague, Susie. It was a normal day. I was out doing my bits of shopping over Super Value, filling up the presses, healthy food. And she rang me and she just said my name, and I was like thinking it was a normal checkup call, and it was, yeah, hi, how's it going? And she goes, we need you in Dublin. And the words I kind of said weren't very appropriate now to say here. But literally, I just grabbed my suitcase, hopped on the train from Mallow and got to Dublin for 9:30. I rang my sister. I asked her, would you drop me to the train station? She just thought I was going away. So she grabbed her handbag with nothing but her handbag, I think, and she came in the train with me and stayed with me for the night. Rona, she was a great help for me. She had offered to be a donor for me if she could as well. She wanted to do all the tests and everything, and she wouldn't take no for an answer. That wasn't the route I really wanted to go with, because even though that they said, look, don't refuse anything, I wouldn't have in the end if it came to that. But I'll never forget her being so generous to do that for me. So anyway, that night I got to the hospital, sitting on the hospital bed. I didn't think it was going to happen that night, because the way I was looking at things was, look, this is a test run now. This is good. At least I'm going to know what way things are going to work, because I wasn't expecting everything to happen so fast. So I was sitting on the bed, nothing attached to me or nothing. Just sitting there, and then about 3 o'clock in the morning, a doctor, I think, came into me, or Caroline could have came into me, I can't actually remember now, and just said that, yeah, you're going down at 7 o'clock. So the organs that were there were viable, so that was fantastic. I was still didn't really know what was going on. I walked down to theatre. My sister walked down with me as well. She was crying. I was like, calm down, like, take it easy, you're fine. She could have done with a wheelchair, to be honest. But look, we leave it there. I know it's weird, but I like anaesthetics. After being through enough of them, that it's the whole falling asleep. It's so peaceful. So I wasn't nervous about it. I'm more nervous now standing here than taking the anaesthetic, So, but look, that's the way it kind of went. The operation, I think, lasted about 12 hours. Came out of the operation. I was walking the next day. Pancreas kicked in straight away. Not a problem. Kidney was working as well. Unfortunately, I had a little complication with the kidney having a bleed about 4 days later, so I had to go back into surgery again. Again, it was something I was aware of. My transplant team had told me, all the different complications you could come across and things like that, which was fine. I understood it all, so it was a good risk that was going to be taken. So for about a couple of months after, I did have other complications of getting internal infections and things like that, and I had to get my kidney rewired in a couple of months later again. But again, now everything's perfect. Everything's working fine. I haven't had insulin since the day of my transplant, which is life-changing as is, which is amazing. So the only other things I want to thank, if you don't mind, I'd like to thank a couple of people who actually were amazing to me. I kind of forgot about my sheets. So, sorry, Gwen, who helped me write it down. But, so the people first of all, I really would like to thank the family of the gentleman that I'm after getting my organs from. I do think about him every day. It means a lot to me. Changed a bit life. Along with that, Dr. Owen O'Sullivan in the Bonds in Cork, he was amazing to me. He gave me a reality check many times with my diabetes, which I definitely needed a kick, because I always kind of blocked things out and kind of was like, look, if you don't know what's going on, nothing will happen to you, things like that. And I think a lot of teenagers need to have reality checks that way. I would like to thank, as I said, Vera and Saoirse in the Bonds in Cork. They were absolutely amazing to me, helped me out so many different ways as well. I would like to thank the people in Beaumont Hospital, who mainly I kind of only had dealings with when I got my kidney rewired during the summer, and that surgeon was Gordon Smith. Again, he was very helpful any way that I needed, or any questions, he answered them all for me. properly implanted in the bonds or in CUH in Cork, and the main nurse I used to deal with would have been Phil O'Driscoll, who absolutely was amazing in giving me any bit of information I needed, and she was also there, and as well with any of her team that was up there, or their team. Especially St. Vincent's Hospital, I really, really can't thank them enough. Caroline, who was here, as I said, was absolutely amazing to me. She really helped me out so much, and Susie, her colleague at the time. Tom Gallagher, again, my surgeon for my pancreas, explained everything so well to me that it was fine. You know, I felt at ease of whatever was going to happen was going to happen. Any complications, I was ready for them. My family and my sister, Rona, who helped me out so much as well. Where am I going? I think they're all the main people I would really... also I have to say my place of work. I worked for Daniel's, Super Value and Mallow. From the minute I had to take time off work, they were just so good to me. My job was there for me when I was coming back. There was no if I was coming back, it was when I was coming back. My job was secure, so that actually took a lot of pressure off me worrying about my mortgage and stuff like that. And for the lead up to my transplant and everything, I went back working there last November, back to friends and colleagues, and it was like I was never gone, which I totally enjoy. So I look forward to, I won't say I look forward to going back to work over the next few days again, but I actually do look forward to going back to work. And last, anyway, all I want to say is definitely again to the family that have donated the kidney and the pancreas to me. I'll never be able to repay them, but I hope in time I'm going to be able to write a letter to that family anonymously, and it's going to be passed on to them. And I just hope that they understand how it has affected my life, given me a normal life. Before I used to see a future. Now I do see a future for myself. And thanks again for inviting me here today. It is an honour to be here, to leave you here my bit of a story. And hopefully other people that will be going through the kidney and pancreas waiting for the transplant will maybe get some hope out of my story that a small little ginger fella like me can survive. Look, that's all I have to say. And anyone that doesn't have a donor card, really consider having one. It is life-changing for some family. And thank you very much, and I hope I didn't go on too long.
Thanks very much, William. I was very interested in him saying that he was more nervous speaking here than he was going down for the anaesthetic, and I can actually see what you mean sometimes. And I think, you know, when you think about all the patients and families that have come up here and spoken, you know, and they, you know, Gwen obviously gives them a lot of support, but they're not trained speakers. So to come up here and talk about something which is so deeply emotional, you know, it's just amazing, and how well you've done telling your story up here, because it's such a big part of our campaign. You know, we just wouldn't be able to do it without you. So thank you very much. So our final speaker is our national chairperson, Eddie Flood, who is going to close the session.
Thanks very much, Carol. All I can say is, wow, what we heard today is the most inspiring stories from transplant recipients, donor families, people waiting on transplant lists. And, you know, the story is that there's hope, which is brilliant. And, you know, people that have been through the process and, you know, that are coming out the other side. And, you know, as I said before, every day is a special day when you can get up. And to be crude about it, you know, even in my situation, you know, just going to the toilet every day, it's a big plus. And we're so grateful to our donors. Also to our families, you know, who've supported us through these difficult times. You know, there was a case where when I was diagnosed, I had 4 young boys at home with my wife, and we didn't realise what we were going to face into. And, you know, we had to make big, rapid changes in our life. And I have to say to Jennifer, my wife, I could have done it without her, you know, because she was special and she is special, and she just took on the role of father, mother, carer, driver to GAA, rugby, horse riding, whatever had to be done at the time. We done it, and she done it, and she took a lot of pressure off me, and I always be forever grateful to her for that. I'd like to thank everybody today for attending today, and people at home watching. I hope you're inspired by the stories that we've heard. Thanks to all the healthcare professionals. Without their input, we surely would not be here today. Just thanks to everybody for coming, and I hope the media, you know, bring attention to all of these stories over triumph, over adversity. We need these inspiring stories to be told and heard. And thanks very much for listening. And I have also to thank Carol for all her hard work, and the team in the IKA. They do super work behind the scenes, promoting organ donor awareness every day, not just this week. The staff work incredibly hard. They're on first name terms with 99% of our members, and people are, you know, just are inspired by their attention to their needs when they need it. So thanks very much to everybody for coming, and thank you.